2 alien girls swore loyalty to me because I broke one rule and saved their planet. The Storm Lieutenant Cade Mercer floated in the observation pod of the UES Watchtower, staring at the tactical display with growing dread. The asteroid storm, a chaotic maelstrom of rock and ice caught in gravitational flux, had shifted trajectory again. Computer projections painted crimson vectors across his screen, all converging on the twin moons of Elvara. Command. This is Observation Post 7. Cade spoke into his comm. The storm's accelerated, impact in 6 hours, not 12. Static crackled before Captain Morrison's voice cut through. Acknowledged, Lieutenant. Maintain observation protocols. Do not deviate from your mission parameters. Cade's jaw tightened. Mission parameters. Watch and record. Let the Zilari face extinction, while Earth's bureaucrats debated intervention policies light years away. The Galactic Accord was sacred. Humans had earned their seat at the cosmic table by proving they wouldn't interfere in alien conflicts. One violation could strip humanity of every alliance they'd built, but 15 million Zilari lived on those moons. He pulled up the cultural files on his secondary screen. The Zilari were artists, philosophers, builders of living cities that grew from crystalline seeds. Their architecture sang in harmony with stellar winds. Their children learned to paint with light before they could speak. They had no weapons, capable of deflecting continent-sized asteroids. Zephyr 7 to command, came another transmission. Zilari vessels are attempting evacuation, but their ships can't achieve escape velocity with full passenger loads. They're choosing who to save. Cade closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw families torn apart by impossible choices. Parents pushing children onto overcrowded ships while staying behind themselves. He'd seen the aftermath of the Kepler colony disaster, empty playgrounds, toys scattered in the rubble, the silence that followed when an entire civilization simply stopped. His hands moved before his conscious mind caught up, fingers dancing across the control interface. The UES prototype Stormbreaker hung in the nearby maintenance dock, humanity's most advanced ship, equipped with experimental gravitational manipulators. It was untested, unauthorized, and absolutely off-limits to junior officers, but it could redirect an asteroid storm. Computer, begin emergency authentication override, Cade commanded. Warning. Emergency protocols require senior officer authorization. Override. Authorization code. Mercer 77 Alpha. He'd memorized his father's old codes years ago, never imagining he'd use them. Admiral Marcus Mercer might disown him for this, but at least they'd both be alive to argue about it. The docking clamps, released with a series of mechanical thuds. Cade felt the prototype's engines come alive beneath him, raw power barely contained within experimental shielding. The gravitational manipulators hummed with potential energy that made his teeth ache. He opened a channel to the Zilari vessels. This is Lieutenant Cade Mercer of the United Earth Service. I'm going to try to redirect the storm. Get your people clear of the impact zone. All of them. Human pilot, came a melodic voice, tinged with desperate hope. The Galactic Accord. Forbids. The Galactic Accord can court-martial me later, Cade interrupted, pushing the engines to full burn. Right now I've got work to do. The Stormbreaker screamed toward the asteroid storm, its experimental system straining against forces that could pulverize planets. Cade's training took over. Calculate trajectories, identify the storm's gravitational anchor points, find the precise moment where applied force could cascade into redirection. Behind him, Elvara's twin moons hung like pearls against the void, their cities glowing with bioluminescent beauty. Ahead, death approached in a cloud of stone and ice. Cade smiled grimly and armed the gravitational manipulators. Some rules were worth breaking. The aftermath. The gravitational shockwave hit like the fist of an angry god. Cade's harness cut in two, his chest as the Stormbreaker tumbled through space, its hull screaming under stresses no ship was meant to endure. Warning lights painted the cockpit blood red while damage reports cascaded across his screens. But the storm was turning. Massive asteroids, locked in their deadly dance for millennia, suddenly found new partners. The manipulator's artificial gravity, well had created a cascade effect, each redirected rock pulling its neighbors into safer trajectories. What had been a planet killer became a spectacular light show as the storm dispersed harmlessly into deep space. Impact probability now 0%, the computer announced with mechanical satisfaction. Cade slumped in his pilot's seat, exhaustion flooding through him like ice water. 15 million lives. He'd saved 15 million lives, and all it had cost was his career, his freedom, and probably his species standing in galactic politics. His comm crackled to life. Human vessel, this is Dara Moonwhisper of the Zalari Diplomatic Corps. Are you functional? Still breathing, Cade managed. Your people? Safe. All of them. Because of you. The alien woman's voice carried harmonics impossible for human vocal cords, like crystal bells touched by starlight. Why? Your laws, your accord. Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing. 2 hours later, Cade's battered ship limped into Elvara orbital space under escort. He expected arrest, interrogation, maybe a quick trip to the nearest military tribunal. Instead, he found himself staring at something unprecedented in human history, an alien honor guard. 7 Zalari vessels surrounded him, their hulls shifting between translucent and opaque in patterns that spoke of deep respect. Each ship was a work of art, organic curves married to crystalline technologies that made human engineering look clumsy by comparison. Lieutenant Mercer, Captain Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. You are ordered to return to base immediately. For debriefing and… Respectfully, Captain, Cade interrupted. I don't think that's going to happen. The lead Zalari vessel moved closer, its hull shimmering with new patterns. Human Cade Mercer, the melodic voice returned. I am Dara Moonwhisper, first guardian of the Starline. With me is my sister Naya Moonwhisper, second guardian. By the ancient laws of our people, we formally request permission to come aboard your vessel. They want to board? Morrison's voice carried a note of panic. Negative, Lieutenant. Under no circumstances. Cade cut the transmission. Permission granted. The docking was unlike anything in human protocols. The Zalari ship didn't connect. It merged, its hull flowing like liquid until it formed a seamless bridge. 2 figures glided across, moving with a grace that suggested they'd grown up in low gravity. Dara and Naya Moonwhisper were clearly sisters, though their differences were as striking as their similarities. Both stood nearly 7 feet tall, with the characteristic Zalari features, elongated limbs, faces that seemed carved from moonstone, and eyes that held depths like stellar nurseries. But where Dara carried herself with diplomatic precision, Naya moved like a coiled spring, her hand never far from the crystalline weapon at her side. Lieutenant Cade Mercer, Dara spoke, her voice filling the small cabin with impossible harmonics. You have saved our world without seeking reward or recognition. You have violated your own laws to preserve our people. It was the right thing to do, Cade said simply. The sisters exchanged a look laden with meaning. Then to Cade's shock they knelt. By the Starline oath, they spoke in unison. We pledge our lives, our honor, and our service to you until the debt is fulfilled. Wait, what debt? I don't want… The debt of 15 million lives, Naya interrupted, her voice carrying steel beneath the music. This cannot be refused, human. This cannot be denied. Cade stared at them, understanding dawning like a cold sun. How long? Until you release us, Dara said softly. Or until we die. The trial, the Galactic Tribunal chamber stretched like a cathedral of stars, its crystalline walls rising into infinity, while holographic displays showed the proceedings to 1 billion watching eyes across the galaxy. Cade sat in the defendant's chair, a human-scaled seat that looked absurdly small among the alien architecture, while lawyers, politicians, and military officials argued over his fate. Dara and Naya flanked him, their presence causing ripples of unease throughout the assembled delegates. The Moonwhisper sisters had refused all attempts to separate them from their sworn charge, creating a diplomatic nightmare that had escalated to the highest levels of galactic government. The humans' actions, thundered Ambassador Vex Korath, his chitinous frame clicking with agitation, represent a fundamental violation of the Galactic Accord. If member species begin unilateral interventions, the very foundation of our peace will crumble. Admiral Rebecca Torres, humanity's chief representative, stood to respond. Her silver hair and weathered face spoke of decades fighting for Earth's place among the stars. The accused acted to prevent genocide. Surely the tribunal recognizes moral imperatives that transcend bureaucratic protocols. Moral imperatives. The hegemony's delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a force field lattice, pulsed with indignation. Who determines morality in a galaxy of 10,000 species? The humans? Cade watched the debate with growing frustration. They spoke about him like he wasn't there, reducing his choice to save 15 million lives into a legal precedent to be dissected and filed away. Only the Zilari delegation remained silent, their observer's seat occupied by an elderly figure whose presence seemed to bend light around him. "If I may address the tribunal directly," Cade said, rising from his chair. The chamber fell silent. Prosecutor Thainvoss, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted between purple and gold, hissed softly. "The defendant will remain seated until called upon." "The defendant," Dara said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness, "is under the protection of the Starline Oath. In Zilari law, he may speak when he chooses." "This is not a Zilari court," Thainvoss snapped. "But it judges Zilari matters," Naya interjected, her hand moving to her weapon. "Our ancient laws supersede your tribunal's authority in questions of honor debt." The elderly Zilari in the observers section finally stood. "If I may," he said, his voice like wind through crystal. "Chimes, I am Zephon Starweaver, keeper of the ancient ways. Perhaps it is time this court understood what young Mercer has truly done." The chamber's attention focused on the ancient alien like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Starweaver moved with ceremonial slowness to the center of the floor, where holographic displays materialized around him. "The Starline Oath is not merely law," he began. "It is the foundation of our civilization. For 3,000 years, no being has performed a deed worthy of invoking it. To save a world without seeking reward, to sacrifice one's own future for strangers, this is the stuff of legend." The displays showed scenes from Zilari history, heroes of myth who had earned the oath through impossible deeds. The last to invoke the Starline was Aura the Lightbringer, who held back a stellar collapse with her bare hands. Before her, Corbin the Voidwalker, who sealed a dimensional rift that threatened all reality. "Myths and legends," Prosecutor Thainvoss scoffed. "Surely the tribunal will not myths." Starweaver's voice carried absolute authority. "The Starline Oath cannot be sworn lightly. It requires unanimous consent from the Circle of Keepers, validation from the Living Archive, and—" he paused, his ancient eyes finding Cade's, "confirmation that the deed truly warrants legendary status." A new hologram materialized. Cade's desperate flight toward the asteroid storm, the gravitational manipulators firing at precisely calculated moments, the cascade effect that saved 2 worlds. But this version was different, enhanced with a Zilari, sensors that had tracked every micro-adjustment, every split-second decision that had made the impossible possible. 16 separate gravitational calculations, Starweaver narrated, each requiring precision to 9 decimal places. A single error would have accelerated the storm instead of redirecting it. The probability of success was 0.00003%, Marard rippled through the chamber. Even Admiral Torres looked stunned. "This human achieved what our greatest scientists deemed impossible," Starweaver continued. "He did so knowing it would cost him everything, asking nothing in return. If this does not warrant the oath, then nothing ever shall." Cade felt the weight of a galaxy's attention pressing down on him. In saving one species, he'd apparently become something else entirely. A living legend, bound by alien laws to guardians he never asked for. He was beginning to understand that some problems couldn't be solved by flying straight at them. The Bond 3. Months after the trial, which had ended in a hung jury and political stalemate, Cade found himself in the strangest situation of his life, sharing a luxury apartment on Nexus Station with two alien warriors who treated every grocery run like a diplomatic mission. "The merchant is overcharging for the protein supplements," Naya observed, her enhanced senses analyzing the vendor's biometrics for deception. His pulse elevated when he quoted the price. "It's called capitalism." Cade sighed, reaching for his credit chip. "And haggling over groceries isn't exactly warrior guardian behavior." "Everything concerning your welfare is warrior guardian behavior," Dara corrected gently, though her eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "The oath does not distinguish between cosmic threats and overpriced food." The past months had been an education in cultural collision. The Moonwhisper sisters had adapted to human technology with frightening speed, but their interpretation of protection and service bordered on the absurd. They insisted on scanning his meals for toxins, monitoring his sleep patterns for signs of distress, and accompanying him everywhere with the subtle menace of predators barely restrained. It should have been suffocating. Instead, Cade found himself oddly comforted by their presence. They'd moved through his court-martial proceedings like elegant shadows, their testimony turning what should have been a career-ending disgrace into something approaching vindication. The military tribunal had ultimately settled on disciplinary reassignment, which meant Cade now worked as a cultural liaison on Nexus Station, helping bridge the gap between human and alien societies. "Your stress indicators are elevated," Dara observed as they returned to their shared quarters. "Are you concerned about tomorrow's meeting?" Tomorrow, the Consortium of Independent Worlds wanted to discuss humanity's Mercer precedent, the idea that moral imperatives could override legal constraints in extreme circumstances. Half the galaxy saw it as dangerous chaos. The other half viewed it as evolution of interspecies law. "I'm concerned about becoming a political symbol," Cade admitted, settling into his favorite chair, the only piece of furniture sized for humans in their crystalline apartment. "I just wanted to save lives. Now everyone wants to use what I did to justify their own agendas." Naya moved with liquid grace to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. "On Elvara, we have a saying, the river does not ask permission to flow downhill. You saw suffering and acted to end it. The consequences, those belong to others. Wisdom is often indistinguishable from inevitability," Dara added, settling onto one of the meditation cushions that served as Zalari furniture. "You chose correctly. The galaxy's response to that choice reveals more about them than about you." Cade studied his unlikely companions. In the months since their first meeting, he'd learned to read the subtle differences in their expressions, the way Dara's diplomatic training warred with her natural warmth, how Naya's warrior instincts softened when she thought no one was watching. They'd become more than guardians, they'd become friends. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Do you ever regret it? The oath, I mean. You could be home, serving your people, instead of babysitting a disgraced human pilot." The sisters exchanged one of their meaningful looks, a conversation, in glances that spoke of shared memories and unspoken understanding. "Regret?" Naya's laugh held notes like silver bells. "Cade, you saved our world. Our families, our friends, our entire civilization exists because you chose to act. Serving you isn't duty, it's privilege. Besides," Dara added with a smile that transformed her ethereal features, "where else would we find such consistent adventure? Yesterday's diplomatic incident with the hegemony trade delegation, last week's chase through the station's lower levels when you decided to investigate those suspicious sounds alone. That turned out to be a maintenance issue," Cade protested, "which you discovered by nearly falling into a recycling processor," Naya pointed out. "Without us, you'd have been reduced to component molecules." "My point stands." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communications array. Admiral Torres's image materialized in the room's center, her expression grim. "Lieutenant Mercer, we have a situation. The Corvani Empire has blockaded the Tau Ceti system, 15 human colonies, 2 million civilians. They're demanding we revoke the Mercer precedent and accept binding restrictions on human military operations. Cade felt ice form in his stomach. They're using our people as leverage. It gets worse. The Galactic Council is split. Half want to negotiate, half want to send in the fleet. But there's a third option, one that requires your specific talents. Dara and Naya were already moving, their relaxed demeanor replaced by the focused intensity of warriors preparing for battle. What kind of talents? Cade asked, though he already suspected the answer. Torres's smile was sharp as a blade. The kind that break rules and save worlds. The choice. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, its stealth coating shimmering like oil on water. Through the bridge's viewports, Cade could see the Corvani fleet. Massive dreadnoughts arranged in a perfect blockade formation, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of glassing planets. 15 ships, Captain Jonas Hawk muttered, his weathered hands gripping the command chair's armrests. Each one outguns us 3-1. But they're not expecting us, Admiral Torres replied through the comlink. The Corvani think in terms of overwhelming force. They don't understand human creativity. Cade studied the tactical display, his mind automatically calculating vectors and probabilities. The Corvani had positioned themselves perfectly to intercept any rescue attempt, but their formation assumed a conventional approach. They weren't accounting for the experimental gravitic drive humming beneath the Defiance's hull. The same technology he'd used to redirect the asteroid storm. It's doable, he said finally, but it'll require precision timing and more luck than I'm comfortable with. Dara moved to stand beside him, her presence a warm certainty in the cold bridge air. Define doable. We use the gravitic drive to create a localized space-time distortion, Cade explained, highlighting sections of the Corvani formation. Skip between their ships faster than their targeting systems can track, hit their command, vessel disable their communications and scatter the fleet before they can coordinate a response. Probability of success? Naya asked from her position at the weapons console. The Zalari sisters had spent the past week learning human military systems with frightening efficiency. 40%, maybe 50% if everything goes perfectly. And if it doesn't? Captain Hawk's voice carried the weight of a career spent calculating acceptable losses. Cade met his eyes. Then 2 million civilians die because I wasn't good enough. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Through the quantum comm array, they could hear fragments of transmissions from the besieged colonies. Status reports, casualty, counts, children crying for parents who might never come home. There's another way, Torres said quietly. The Galactic Council has authorized negotiations. We could accept the Corvani terms, agree to binding restrictions on human operations, save the colonies by sacrificing the precedent. And the next time someone needs saving? Cade shook his head. The next asteroid storm, the next dying world, we just watch it happen because we signed a paper? Sometimes compromise is the only path to peace, Dara observed, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it. Sometimes, Naya countered, peace bought with weakness is just delayed war. Cade closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 2 million lives pressing against his consciousness. The safe choice was negotiation, accept restrictions, save the colonies, prevent immediate bloodshed. The right choice was harder to define. Admiral, he said finally, patch me through to the Corvani fleet. Torres hesitated. Cade, trust me. The main screen shifted, showing the interior of a Corvani command ship. General Thax Morin loomed in the frame, 8 feet of chitinous armor and barely contained aggression. His compound eyes fixed on Cade with predatory intensity. The human who breaks laws to play hero. Thax Morin's voice carried the clicking harmonics of his species. Have you come to surrender? I've come to offer you a choice, Cade replied calmly. Release the colonies, withdraw your fleet, and this ends without bloodshed. The Corvani general's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You threaten me. 1 ship against 15? I'm not threatening you, Cade said. I'm explaining consequences. 3 months ago, I violated the Galactic Accord to save 15 million lives. Today you're threatening 2 million humans to force political concessions. The parallel should be obvious. Meaning? Meaning you've given me all the justification I need. Cade cut the transmission and turned to the bridge crew. Captain Hawk, Admiral Torres via comlink, the tactical officers and the Moon Whisper sisters, all watching him with expressions ranging from horror to admiration. He's not going to back down, Cade announced. The Corvani see weakness as invitation, strength as challenge. But they do understand one thing: consequences. His fingers moved across the gravitic drive controls, feeling the familiar thrum of barely contained forces. Captain, prepare for combat maneuvering. All hands secure for gravitational flux. Cade, Torres's voice carried decades of command authority. You don't have authorization for... Admiral, he interrupted gently. With respect, I stopped asking for authorization when I decided that doing the right thing was more important than following orders. The Defiance vanished from normal space-time, reappearing 3 seconds later inside the Corvani formation. Cade's hands danced across the controls, each micro-adjustment spawning cascade effects that sent enemy dreadnoughts tumbling through space like toys in a hurricane. Impossible, someone whispered. No, Dara said quietly, her voice filled with something approaching awe, just human. The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the Corvani fleet was scattered across 3 light minutes of space, their command ship disabled and drifting, their blockade broken beyond repair. As rescue ships poured through the gap to evacuate the colonies, Cade slumped in, his pilot's seat, exhaustion and adrenaline warring in his bloodstream. The consequences, Naya observed, will be significant. Probably, Cade agreed. But 2 million people are going home to their families tonight. Dara placed a hand on his shoulder, the first time either sister had initiated physical contact. The Starline Oath, she said softly, recognizes no higher calling than the protection of innocent life. What you did today, it validates everything we swore. Through the viewports, the first evacuation ships were already approaching the Ina colonies, their holds filling with grateful civilians. Cade watched them go and felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but purpose. He'd broken another rule. The galaxy would debate, politicians would posture, and lawyers would argue precedent. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, families were reuniting, children were laughing, and hope endured. Some rules were worth breaking. Some choices defined who you truly were. And sometimes the consequences were exactly what the universe needed. The end.